The sun barely shone through the dirty windows of the abandoned house on Lled Avenue when Maya Johnson turned on her old boombox and began reading her new lyrics. At 19, she already understood that music was the only way out of East Detroit, where every other house stood empty and every third was ready to collapse. "I was born in a city where dreams die faster than people," she sang, her words echoing off the cracked walls. Maya wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. She was short, with curly hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, wearing worn jeans and old Nike sneakers. But when she rapped, something changed. Her voice became more confident, her movements more precise, and her eyes lit up with a fire that even the harsh reality of Motor City couldn't extinguish. Tiffany Brown sat on an old mattress in the corner and recorded everything on her phone. At 20, she had been Maya's best friend since kindergarten, when they attended Martin Luther King Jr. High School on the East Side together. Tiffany also wrote rap, but she lacked the natural flow that Maya had. She knew it, though she never admitted it even to herself. "That line is killer," Tiffany said, pausing the recording, "especially the part about how the city eats its children." Maya smiled and turned off the music. They were in a house that technically belonged to Tiffany's grandmother, but the old woman had been living in a nursing home for 3 years, and the family couldn't afford to maintain the place. The house was gradually falling apart, but for the girls, it was the perfect rehearsal space. No one complained about the loud music here. "I need to go home," Maya said, glancing at the old clock on the wall. "Dad's working the morning shift today. He'll be home by 3. Marcus Johnson worked as a security guard at the Ford Rouge complex in Dearborn. At 45, he looked older than his age. Constant shift schedules, the stress of job insecurity, and raising his daughter alone after his wife left the family 5 years ago had taken their toll. But Marcus loved his daughter more than life itself, and supported her musical ambitions, even when neighbors joked that rap isn't a job for a decent girl. The Johnsons' apartment was in a 2-story house on Connor Street, in a neighborhood that was once the working heart of Detroit. Now, every 4th house was boarded up, and only every other streetlight worked. But it was their home, and Maya knew every neighbor by name. "How's it going, baby?" Marcus asked when his daughter walked into the kitchen. He was sitting at a small table with a mug of coffee and a copy of the Detroit Free Press, although there wasn't much to read. Mostly news about factory closures and rising crime. "Fine, Dad. Tiffany recorded my new tracks," Maya said, taking out her phone and playing the recording. Marcus listened intently. He never understood rap music. He grew up on Motown and soul, but he saw his daughter's eyes light up when she read her lines. More importantly, he saw it as a chance for Maya to get out of a neighborhood where most girls had only 2 paths: marry young or get pregnant early. "It sounds professional," he said honestly. "But remember, you need a plan B. Education is still important." "I know, Dad, but I have talent, and I'm not going to waste it." The next day, Maya and Tiffany went downtown to the Cass Corridor, where several music studios were located. They had heard about a guy named Jason Wright, who worked as a beatmaker and sometimes took new artists into his basement studio on Woodward Avenue. Jason was 23 and had been trying to break into the music business for 3 years. Tall, thin, with tattoos on his forearms and always wearing headphones around his neck, he was a typical representative of the generation that grew up after the collapse of Detroit's auto industry. His parents worked for GM until the mass layoffs of 2008, and he himself found salvation in music. Jason's studio was located in the basement of an old office building. The walls were covered with soundproofing material, and in the corner stood a setup consisting of 2 microphones, a mixing console, and a computer with professional software. It wasn't the most modern equipment, but it was enough to create high-quality sound. "Show me what you can do," Jason said, as the girls descended the creaky stairs. Maya and Tiffany took turns reading their best tracks to the instrumental music that Jason played on his computer. The difference was immediately obvious. Maya felt the rhythm, played with intonation, and paused in all the right places. Tiffany tried her best, but she lacked naturalness. Every line came with effort. "You have potential," Jason told Maya when the session was over. "Your voice is good, your flow is natural. The lyrics need some work, but that's a matter of technique." Tiffany felt a pang of disappointment, but tried to hide it with a smile. "What about me?" she asked. "Keep working. Everyone needs time." On the way home, the girls walked in silence for most of the way. Finally, Tiffany couldn't take it anymore. "He just didn't understand my style." Of course, Maya quickly agreed, even though she knew Jason was right. She really did have a talent that you don't come across every day in the street battles of East Detroit. That evening, Maya sat on the porch of her house and looked out at the street. The neighborhood kids were playing basketball using a hoop without a net attached to the garage. Music was playing somewhere, a mix of rap and soul that was the soundtrack of their neighborhood. At that moment, Mr. Thompson, a 67-year-old neighbor who had lived here since the neighborhood was thriving, approached her. "I hear you're into music," he said, sitting down on the step next to her. "Yes, sir. In my day, we thought Motown would last forever. Then everything changed. The factories closed, people left." He paused. "But the music remained. Maybe you'll be the voice of our generation." Maya nodded. She felt responsible not only for her career, but also for telling the truth about life in Detroit. About people who didn't give up. About dreams that survive in the most difficult conditions. Late in the evening, she wrote a new track. "I'm from a city where skyscrapers stand empty, and children dream to the sound of sirens. Where every street remembers better times, but we build our future from the ruins of systems." Tiffany sent a message. "See you tomorrow. I'll be practicing the new material." Maya replied with a heart and went to bed, not knowing that in a few months this friendship would become deadly dangerous. In Detroit, dreams could turn into nightmares faster than the money for rent ran out. 3 weeks had passed since her first visit to Jason's studio when he unexpectedly called Maya. She was helping her father sort through old things in the garage, preparing for another move. The landlord was raising the rent again, and the Johnson family had to find cheaper housing. "Hi, it's Jason. I have a proposal." The producer's voice sounded businesslike, but with a hint of enthusiasm. "Would you like to record a few tracks?" A real studio recording Maya's heartbeat faster. "Seriously? How much will it cost?" "Nothing. I'll get a percentage if something comes of it. It's an investment in your talent." Marcus, standing next to boxes of old family photos, raised an eyebrow when he heard his daughter's conversation. When she hung up, he asked cautiously, "Who is this Jason guy? You don't really know him." "Dad, it's an opportunity, a real studio recording. Opportunities like this don't come along every day in our neighborhood." Marcus sighed. He knew his daughter was right, but his experience living in Detroit had taught him not to trust offers that seemed too good to be true. "Fine, but I'm coming with you to meet him in person." The next day, Maya, Tiffany, and Marcus went down to the basement studio on Woodward Avenue. Jason greeted them professionally, showing them the equipment, explaining the recording process, and talking about his plans to promote local artists. He was serious, knew his stuff, and Marcus felt he could be trusted. "Mr. Johnson, I grew up in the same neighborhood as Maya," Jason said. "I understand what it's like to try to break out of here. Music gave me a chance, and I want to give others the same chance." Tiffany stood nearby and listened intently. When Jason mentioned recording, she asked, "What about me?" "Maya and I are a team." Jason hesitated before answering. "Let's see how things go. First, we need to focus on one project." It was a diplomatic way of saying no, and everyone understood. Tiffany nodded with a forced smile, but Maya could see the pain in her friend's eyes. The first real studio session took place a week later. Maya arrived with a notebook full of new lyrics written during sleepless nights. She wrote about what she knew best, life in East Detroit, the dreams and disappointments of her generation. "Let's try this beat," Jason said, playing an instrumental he had created specifically for her voice. The melody was dark but hopeful, just what her lyrics needed. Maya stepped into the soundproof booth, put on her headphones, and when the music started, something magical happened. Her voice sounded even more confident than usual, and the words fit the beat as if they had been created for it. "I was born in a city of abandoned factories, where children play among rusty fences. But every ruined wall has a story to tell, and every heart has its own memory." Jason sat at the console and couldn't believe what he was hearing. In 3 years of work, he had met many aspiring rappers, but he had never seen such natural talent. Maya didn't just read the lyrics. She told a story, conveyed emotions, and made the listener feel every word. "That's amazing," he said when the recording was over. "You're ready for the big stage." For the next 2 months, Maya spent 3 to 4 hours in the studio every day after school. She learned how to work with a microphone, breathe correctly, and control her voice. Jason was a patient teacher. He explained the technical aspects of recording, helped her refine her lyrics, and created beats specifically for her style. Tiffany came along with her friend at first, but gradually her visits became less frequent. She saw Maya transforming into a real artist and realized that she herself was lagging far behind. Their childhood friendship was beginning to crack under the weight of their professional differences. "Maybe I should work with Jason too?" Tiffany asked one day as they were walking home after another session. "Of course! I'll talk to him," Maya replied quickly, even though she knew Jason wasn't interested in working with Tiffany yet. The next day, Maya cautiously brought up the subject with the producer. They were sitting in a small cafe near the studio, discussing plans for the following week. "Jason, Tiffany really wants to record something. We've been friends since childhood, and I feel guilty." Jason put down his coffee and looked at her seriously. "Maya, there's no room for sentimentality in the music business. Tiffany doesn't have your talent. If I spend time on everyone who just wants to try, I won't have any resources left for real talent. But she's my best friend. And that's your choice. But don't let friendship slow down your career. There aren't many opportunities like this in Detroit." A month later, Maya was ready for her first public performance. Jason made arrangements with the owner of a small club in the city center called Shelter on Congress Street, where Eminem and other Detroit rap stars had once performed. It was a sacred place for the local hip-hop scene. On the night of the performance, Maya was more nervous than ever. She stood backstage in her best outfit, black jeans, a white t-shirt, and Air Jordan sneakers that her father had given her for her birthday after saving up for 3 months. "Are you ready?" Jason asked, checking the sound one last time. About 50 people had gathered in the hall, mostly local rap fans, a few other up-and-coming artists, and a handful of bloggers covering the Detroit music scene. Marcus sat in the front row with a proud smile on his face. Tiffany had come too, but she kept to herself, standing by the bar. When Maya took the stage and the music started, the room fell silent. She delivered the first lines quietly, almost in a whisper, but with each beat, her voice grew more confident. "This is my city, my streets, my pain. Every day here is like my last. That's the role. But I won't give up. I won't become another statistic. My voice will break through this system of criticism." By the middle of the performance, the audience was completely under her spell. People swayed to the rhythm, sang along to the chorus, and some filmed the performance on their phones. Maya felt more alive than ever. This was what she was born to do. After the performance, strangers approached her, asked for her contact information, and offered to collaborate. One of the local bloggers took a short interview. "Where do you get such profound lyrics at 19? "I just talk about what I see every day. Detroit isn't just ruined buildings. Real people with real stories live here. I want to be their voice." Tiffany waited for the crowd to disperse and approached her friend. "You were amazing," she said, her voice sounding sincere, mixed with bitterness. A real star. Thanks. You know, Jason says we have a chance to record a mini-album. Maybe you could... No, Tiffany interrupted. I get it. This is your path. I'll find mine. On the way home, Marcus proudly told his daughter about the audience's reaction. People said they hadn't heard anything so real in a long time. You're really special, baby. But Maya thought about the look on Tiffany's face as she left the club alone. A friendship that had lasted almost 15 years was beginning to crumble under the weight of one's success and the other's failure. That night, Tiffany sat in her room and listened to recordings of her own tracks. She knew Jason was right. She didn't have the natural talent that Maya had. But admitting that meant admitting that all her dreams of a music career were an illusion. Maya lay in her bed and thought about the future. For the first time in many years, she believed she could change her life, escape East Detroit, and show the world what it meant to be young, black, and talented in a city that many considered dead. Neither girl could have foreseen where the growing rift between them would lead. In Detroit, friendship and betrayal often went hand in hand, and one person's dreams could become another's nightmare. That February morning in Detroit was particularly brutal. Snow had been falling for the third day in a row, turning the streets of the eastern part of the city into dirty white streams of slush. Maya was sitting in the kitchen eating oatmeal for breakfast when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, with an Atlanta area code. A woman's voice introduced herself as Kira Williams from Southern Trap Records. She had seen Maya's performance video at Shelter, which had garnered over 10,000 views on YouTube in 2 weeks, and wanted to meet to discuss a possible collaboration. Maya could barely contain the tremor in her voice as she arranged the meeting. Southern Trap Records wasn't a major label, but it was a real record company with an office in Atlanta and several successful artists on its roster. For a girl from East Detroit, it was like an invitation to another universe. Marcus sat at the table with his morning coffee and watched his daughter's face light up with every minute of the conversation. When she hung up, he asked about the call, although he already understood everything from her reaction. After breakfast, Maya immediately called Jason and then Tiffany. Jason responded with professional enthusiasm. This was exactly what they had been striving for from the beginning. Tiffany congratulated her friend, but there was a tension in her voice that Maya chose to ignore. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at the Renaissance Center Hotel in downtown Detroit. Kira Williams flew in especially for this conversation, an elegant woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a business suit and with the confident manner of a successful music manager. Maya came to the meeting with Jason, who insisted on being present as her producer and informal manager. The offer was serious. The label was ready to invest in recording a full album, promoting it in the southern states, and even a small club tour. In return, they wanted a 3-year contract with an option to extend and a standard revenue split. For a budding artist from Detroit, it was an incredibly generous offer. Kira talked in detail about the label's plans, how they saw Maya's career developing, and the opportunities for growth in the industry. She talked about music as a business, but with a respect for creativity that inspired confidence. Jason asked technical questions about studio time, rights to the material, and creative control. He understood that this was an opportunity not only for Maya, but also for himself. Working with an Atlanta-based label could open doors that the basement studio on Woodward. Maya listened to it all as if in a dream. 6 months ago, she was rapping in an abandoned house on the east side, and now serious people were discussing her future career in an expensive hotel. Reality seemed surreal, but at the same time, absolutely right. As if her whole life had led to this moment. After the meeting, Maya and Jason went to a small cafe nearby. The atmosphere between them had changed. Now they were no longer just a young rapper and a local producer, but potential partners in a serious music project. Jason was excited about the opportunities that were opening up for them. He talked about the studios in Atlanta, the producers they could work with, how the southern hip-hop scene could accept Maya with her authentic Detroit sound. Maya listened to him and understood that they were on the verge of big changes. But along with the excitement came anxiety. Success meant that she would have to leave behind many things that had defined her life until now, including people. That evening, she met Tiffany at their usual spot, her grandmother's house, which still served as an unofficial studio for local rappers. Tiffany sat on an old mattress and listened to music through small speakers connected to her phone. Maya told her friend about the meeting, the label's offer, and her plans for the future. She spoke cautiously, trying to share her joy without hurting Tiffany's feelings. However, with every word, the tension in the room grew. Tiffany listened silently, playing with the bracelet on her wrist, a gift they had bought together 3 years ago at the mall when they still dreamed of conquering the world as a duo. When Maya finished her story, there was a long pause. "So you're going to Atlanta," Tiffany finally said. It was a statement, not a question. "Nothing's final yet. I need to look over the contract and talk to my dad." "Maya, don't. We both know you're going, and you're doing the right thing." There was no anger in Tiffany's voice, only deep exhaustion. Exhaustion from having to pretend to be happy for her friend's success when her own dreams had fallen apart. Exhaustion from trying to convince herself that there was still a chance, that talent could be developed through hard work. Maya tried to say something, but Tiffany stopped her with a wave of her hand. "Remember how we dreamed of performing together? How we planned to call our group East Side Queens?" The memory was painful for both of them. 2 years ago, they really believed they would conquer the world as a duo. They recorded tracks on an old tape recorder, rehearsed in the same house, and wrote lyrics while sitting in the schoolyard after class. "Tiff, I haven't forgotten about it. Maybe when things settle down, I can put in a good word. Stop." Tiffany got up from the mattress and walked over to the window. "I don't need handouts. I don't want a career out of pity." A chasm had formed between the girls that could no longer be bridged. Maya knew she was losing her best friend, but she didn't know how to stop it. Tiffany knew she was losing her last hope for a music career, and that was more painful than any physical suffering. Over the next few weeks, contact between the girls became increasingly rare and formal. Maya was absorbed in preparing to work with the label, studying the contract with the help of a lawyer Marcus found through his union connections, recording new material with Jason, and planning her move to Atlanta. Tiffany, meanwhile, was trying to find her place in the local music scene. She went to jam sessions at other studios, auditioned for backup vocals with several bands, and even considered switching from rap to R&B. But everywhere she went, the result was the same. A polite, "We'll call you back," which meant no. Reality was cruel. In a world where talent determined everything, Tiffany simply lacked natural ability. She could work twice as hard as Maya, devote all her free time to music, study the techniques of the most successful rappers. But the magic just wasn't there. Her voice remained ordinary, her flow forced, her lyrics predictable. Marcus watched the changes in his daughter's life with mixed feelings. He was proud of her success, but worried about how quickly everything was changing. Detroit was their home, despite all its problems, and the music industry was notorious for its ruthlessness toward young talent. One evening, as Maya sat in her room working on new lyrics, he knocked on the door and entered with 2 mugs of tea. "How are things with Tiffany?" he asked, settling on the edge of the bed. Maya put down her notebook and sighed. "Bad. She hardly talks to me, and when we do see each other, we pretend everything is fine, but we both know it's not." Friendship is a complicated thing, especially when people's lives take different paths. I didn't want it to turn out this way. We've been best friends since childhood. Marcus paused, searching for the right words. Sometimes people outgrow relationships. It doesn't mean they're bad, or that anyone is to blame. It's just life. But for 19-year-old Maya, that explanation didn't seem enough. She felt guilty for her success, for the fact that her dreams were coming true and Tiffany's weren't. At the same time, She couldn't give up the opportunity to change her life because of her loyalty to her friend. Tiffany spent her evenings alone, listening to Maya's tracks, which Jason posted online to promote her. With each new song, it became more and more obvious how talented her former best friend was, and how untalented she herself was. Envy grew like a cancerous tumor. At first, it was just disappointment in her own abilities. Then it was bitterness from the realization of life's injustice. Finally, it was genuine hatred for Maya's success, mixed with hatred for herself. On social media, Tiffany saw her friend's popularity grow. The comments under the videos were full of admiration. The real voice of Detroit, future star, finally authentic rap. Every word of praise for Maya was taken as a personal insult. March brought the first warm days and a final decision on the contract. Maya signed the documents in the presence of a lawyer and her father. Jason got a contract as co-producer of the first album. The plans were ambitious. Recording was to begin in May at one of Atlanta's best studios. The news quickly spread throughout the local music scene. Maya became the first female rapper from East Detroit in many years to receive a real contract with a label. Local bloggers wrote articles about her, radio stations played her tracks, and musicians asked for her autograph. Tiffany learned of her friend's final decision on Facebook. The post was simple: signed with Southern Trap Records. Thank you all for your support. Detroit, I won't forget my roots. There were over 100 congratulations under the post. Tiffany stared at her phone screen for a long time, feeling something break inside her. It was the moment when their childhood friendship and shared dreams officially died, giving way to the adult reality of unequal talent. She wrote a short comment: "Congratulations, you deserve it." But inside, a dark thought grew about the injustice of a world where some get everything and others get nothing. Maya tried several times to contact Tiffany after she signed the contract, but her friend avoided meeting her. When they ran into each other by chance in the neighborhood, the conversation was polite but cold. 15 years of friendship ended not with a scandal, but with silent estrangement. In April, a month before leaving for Atlanta, Maya made one last attempt to repair the relationship. She went to Tiffany's house after school and stood at the door for a long time, gathering the courage to knock. Tiffany opened the door, and for a while they just looked at each other. In her former friend's eyes, Maya saw something new, a cold hatred that was more frightening than open aggression. "But what do you want?" Tiffany asked. "I don't want us to part as enemies." "We meant too much to each other." Meant, past tense. The conversation was short and painful. Tiffany made it clear that their friendship was over, that she didn't wish Maya any harm, but didn't want anything to do with her either. Maya left with a heavy heart, but with the understanding that some things cannot be fixed. Tiffany closed the door and leaned against it. Inside, a mixture of pain, envy, and growing hatred for the unfairness of the world raged. Maya had gotten everything they had dreamed of together, while she was left with nothing in the same old neighborhood. The dark thoughts she had been pushing away for months now completely took over her mind. If she couldn't have success, why should Maya? Tiffany hadn't slept for the third night in a row. She lay in her room and listened as her neighbors turned on the music. Maya's new track, which was already playing on the local radio station WJLB. Her ex-friend's voice penetrated the thin walls of the house and tormented her mind like torture. Outside the window, April rain drizzled, turning the streets of East Detroit into rivers of mud. Tiffany got out of bed and walked over to the mirror. The reflection showed her a face with dark circles under her eyes, sunken cheeks, and an expression she didn't recognize. Months of pent-up anger and envy had changed her beyond recognition. On the table lay a notebook with the lyrics she had written over the past few weeks. The pages were filled with words of hatred, pain from betrayal, fantasies about what her life would be like if talent were distributed fairly. Every line was saturated with the poison of resentment toward a world that had rejected her dreams. Tiffany picked up her phone and opened Maya's Instagram. The new post was dated yesterday afternoon, a photo from Jason's studio with the caption, "Final touches before Atlanta." I can't believe this is really happening. The post had over 200 likes and dozens of enthusiastic comments. Every word of support from Maya felt like a stab in the heart. "You deserve all the success in the world. The future queen of rap. Show them what Detroit can do." Tiffany read the comments until the anger became physically palpable. Her heart was pounding, her hands were shaking, and she had a metallic taste in her mouth. She closed the app and wrote a message to Maya. "Can we meet? I want to talk before you leave. At the old place, at Grandma's house." The reply came 20 minutes later. "Sure, I'll be there at 7. Glad you wrote." Tiffany reread the message several times. Maya's words conveyed sincere joy at the opportunity to make peace. This only intensified her hatred. Even in her generosity, Maya seemed patronizing, as if she were doing her a favor by agreeing to meet. The day dragged on painfully slowly. Tiffany tried to go about her usual business, cleaning her room, watching TV, making dinner, but her thoughts kept returning to the evening meeting. Scenarios of the conversation spun around in her head, ranging from conciliatory to confrontational. By evening, the rain had intensified. Tiffany put on an old jacket and headed for the house on Gretio Avenue. The abandoned building looked even more gloomy in the light of the sparse street lamps. The windows were boarded up, the roof had caved in places, and the porch was ready to collapse at any moment. Maya was already waiting inside, sitting on the same old mattress where they had rehearsed a year ago. She looked happy and full of energy. Success had clearly done her good. At the sight of Tiffany, her face lit up with a smile. "I'm so glad you came. I thought we'd never talk like human beings again." Tiffany sat down opposite her, studying her former friend's face. Maya had really changed over the past few months. She was more confident, stood straighter, and even dressed better. The contract with the label had already begun to change her life. "How are the preparations for Atlanta going?" Tiffany asked, trying to control her voice. Maya talked about her plans for recording, the studio where she would be working, the producers she would be meeting. She spoke with the enthusiasm they had once shared, dreaming of such a future. Now those dreams belonged only to her. "You know," Maya said, "I keep thinking about our old plans, about how we wanted to conquer the world together. Maybe when I get settled in Atlanta, I can help you too." "Stop." Tiffany felt something inside her finally break. "Don't feel sorry for me." "I don't. I just want us both to be successful." "Both of us?" Tiffany got up from the mattress and started pacing around the room. "Don't you really understand? I have no talent. All these months I've been trying to convince myself that I just need to work harder, try harder. But the truth is, I'm ordinary, and you're special." Maya tried to say something, but Tiffany continued. "And you know what hurts the most? You don't even appreciate what you've got. You take it for granted, as if you deserve all this success. Tiff, I worked for it." "Worked?" Tiffany turned sharply toward her. "I worked twice as hard as you. I wrote lyrics until 3 in the morning, rehearsed until I lost my voice, studied every interview with Lauryn Hill and Missy Elliott. But I just don't have what you were born with." A heavy silence hung in the room. Rain drummed on the roof, water dripped somewhere, and old boards creaked in the wind. Maya looked at her friend and saw the depth of her pain for the first time. "I didn't know you felt that way." "Of course you didn't. You were too busy with your own success." Tiffany walked to the window and looked out at the street. Thoughts arose in her head that frightened her. If Maya disappeared, if she was gone, then the pain would also disappear. There would be no constant reminder of her own inadequacy. "Remember how we dreamed of changing the world?" Tiffany said quietly, without turning to Maya. "Becoming the voice of our generation? I remember. And now you'll be the only one with that voice. And I'll stay here, in this crumbling neighborhood, listening to your music on the radio." Maya stood up and walked over to her. "Tiff, I understand that you're hurting. But this isn't the end. You'll find your way. No, I won't. Tiffany turned to her, and Maya saw something terrible in her eyes. And you know what? I don't want you to succeed. I don't want you to be a star. Because that should have been mine. What are you saying? Tiffany walked over to the corner of the room where the remains of old furniture lay. Among them, she noticed a piece of rebar, a rusty metal rod about 1/2 meter long. Her hand reached for it on its own. She's forgotten where she came from, Tiffany whispered. What are you talking about? You forgot where you came from. You forgot that we grew up together, dreamed together. Now you think you're better than me. Maya realized that something terrible was happening. She tried to move toward the exit, but Tiffany quickly got between her and the door. She had the rebar in her hand. Tiff, please, let's just talk. It's too late to talk. The first blow landed on her head. Maya fell, losing consciousness from the pain and shock. Tiffany stood over her, breathing heavily, and looked at the blood on the metal rod. Something inside her mind had finally snapped. The next half hour passed in a blur. Tiffany acted mechanically, as if following a pre-written script. Rage and despair drove her actions. She didn't remember many details afterward, only fragments, the sound of rain, the smell of blood, her own hands that wouldn't obey her. When the fit of rage passed, Tiffany found herself sitting in the corner of the room. Maya was gone. Instead of her childhood friend lay what had once been a human being. The realization of what had happened did not come immediately, but in waves, each bringing new horror. Tiffany didn't remember how she got home. She didn't remember washing her hands, washing her blood-stained clothes, or writing a note on a piece of paper. She only remembered returning home at dawn and leaving a note next to what was left of Maya. She forgot where she came from. The body was discovered 3 days later. A neighbor's child was playing near an abandoned house and noticed a strange smell coming from a broken window. The boy's mother called the police. Detective Robert Clark arrived at the scene at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning. At 42, he had seen a lot of violence on the streets of Detroit, but this scene shocked even him. The 19-year-old victim had been dismembered with particular cruelty, as if the killer had been trying to completely destroy her physical existence. Clark was born and raised in East Detroit, 2 blocks from the crime scene. He knew how poverty and despair could drive people to extremes, but this level of violence among young people was rare. A note lay on the windowsill, written in block letters on a sheet of school notebook paper. She forgot where she came from. The handwriting was neat and feminine. Clark photographed the note and placed it in an evidence bag. Documents in the jacket pocket helped identify the victim. A driver's license in the name of Maya Elizabeth Johnson. Clark knew the name. In recent weeks, the local media had been writing about a young rapper who had signed a contract with an Atlanta label. Coroner Dr. Samuel Hughes arrived an hour later. A preliminary examination showed that death had occurred 3 or 4 days ago from multiple blunt force trauma to the head. The dismemberment had occurred post-mortem, indicating an extreme degree of rage or mental disorder on the part of the killer. I've never seen anything like this in this neighborhood, Hughes said, removing his gloves. The killer spent a lot of time doing what he did after the death. This is not a robbery or an accidental killing. Clark examined the crime scene, looking for any clues. The house was the perfect place for a murder. Isolated, abandoned, no one had been there for months. The killer knew about this place, perhaps had been here before. In the corner of the room, the detective found an old mattress and signs that someone had recently spent time there. Food wrappers, empty bottles, sheets of song lyrics. Maya had used this place for rehearsals. By noon, the victim's father had arrived at the crime scene. Marcus Johnson looked as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Clark delicately questioned him about the last days of his daughter's life, the people she had been in contact with, possible enemies or conflicts. She had no enemies, Marcus repeated. She was a good girl. She helped her neighbors and took care of her family. Who could have done this? Jason Wright arrived on the scene as soon as he heard the news. The producer was in shock. They were supposed to fly to Atlanta in a week. He told the detective about Maya's music career, her contract with the label, how she was preparing for a new life. She talked about problems with her best friend, Jason recalled, some girl named Tiffany. They had been friends since childhood, but recently their relationship had soured. Clark wrote the name in his notebook. The first suspect appeared faster than he had expected. That evening, the detective sat in his office at the station and studied the case files. Crime scene photos, witness statements, the coroner's preliminary report. Everything pointed to the murder being committed by someone who knew the victim well and had strong negative feelings toward her. The note particularly intrigued him. She forgot where she came from, was not just a message, but an accusation. The killer believed that Maya had betrayed her roots, forgotten her origins. A classic motive of envy, reinforced by a sense of betrayal. Clark looked at the map of the area on the wall. Red pins marked the locations of recent crimes, mostly drugs, robberies, fights. Murders happened, but rarely so brutal. This case stood out for its particular cruelty and personal nature. The next morning, the detective planned to start questioning people in the neighborhood and find this Tiffany. His intuition told him that the answer lay in the broken friendship between two girls who dreamed of escaping poverty through music. In Detroit, dreams could be deadly, especially when only some people's dreams came true. Detective Clark began Friday by studying the victim's social media accounts. Maya's Instagram and Facebook painted a picture of an ambitious young woman preparing for big changes in her life. Her latest posts were full of enthusiasm and gratitude. She clearly did not expect any threat from those close to her. Tiffany Brown's account was more modest, but that's what caught the detective's attention. The girl had practically stopped posting content 3 months ago, just when Maya's success began to gain momentum. Her latest posts were gloomy, quotes about betrayal, about how people change when they get what they want. Clark compared photos of the girls from the past year. In the early pictures, they looked like real best friends, hugging, laughing, posing together in matching outfits. But over time, there were fewer joint photos, and in the last ones, Tiffany looked tense, as if she were forcing herself to smile. The detective found Tiffany's address through school records. She still lived with her mother in a house on Connor Street, a few blocks from the Johnsons. Clark decided to pay a visit early in the morning, when the suspect would not yet have had time to psychologically prepare for the conversation. The Brown house was typical of the neighborhood, a 2-story 1940s structure that had once been the pride of the working class, but was now slowly decaying from lack of repair funds. The paint was peeling, the porch was sagging, and half the windows were taped shut with duct tape. The door was opened by a woman of about 45 in a bathrobe, cigarette in hand. Sharon Brown worked the night shift at Henry Ford Hospital as a nurse and looked exhausted from chronic sleep deprivation. "Police? What's going on?" she asked when she saw the badge. Clark explained the purpose of his visit without going into details. Sharon paled when she heard the name Maya Johnson. "My God, is that girl dead? Tiffany is upstairs in her room. She hasn't come out much in the last few days." The detective climbed the creaky stairs to the second floor. The door to Tiffany's room was ajar, and he saw the girl sitting on her bed with headphones in her ears. She looked as if she hadn't slept for several days in a row. Dark circles under her eyes, disheveled hair, clothes she had obviously slept in. "Tiffany Brown?" The girl took off her headphones and looked at him. In her eyes, Clark saw what he was looking for: guilt, fear, and relief all at once. It was the look of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "I'm Detective Clark from the Homicide Division. I need to ask you some questions about Maya Johnson." "She's dead, isn't she?" Tiffany asked quietly. Clark nodded, studying the girl's reaction. A normal reaction to the news of the death of a childhood best friend would include shock, tears, questions about what happened. But Tiffany simply nodded, as if she had received confirmation of what she already knew. When was the last time you saw Maya? Tiffany paused for too long for an innocent person. A few days ago. I don't remember exactly. Where did this meeting take place? At the old house on Gretio. We used to meet there sometimes. Clark noticed the girl's hands shaking. There were scratches on her wrists, fresh ones made in the last few days. Classic signs of self-harm, typical of people experiencing severe stress or guilt. What did you talk about? About her career? About her moving to Atlanta? Tiffany's voice grew quieter. We had a fight. About what? The girl got up from the bed and walked over to the window. Children were playing in the yard, their laughter contrasting sharply with the gloomy atmosphere in the room. Because she got everything we dreamed of together. And I was left with nothing. Clark felt he was getting closer to the truth. Tiffany's voice sounded as bitter as the note found at the crime scene. Tiffany, I need you to come with me to the station for a more detailed conversation. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But I have reason to believe that you can help with the investigation. The girl nodded with some relief. Can I change my clothes? At the station, Clark sat Tiffany down in the interrogation room. A small room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a mirror behind which his colleagues could watch. The girl sat down and folded her arms on the table, as if preparing for the inevitable. Tell me about your friendship with Maya, the detective began. Tiffany spoke in a monotone voice, as if reciting a memorized story. Childhood in the same neighborhood, shared dreams of a music career, first attempts at writing rap. But when she got to the last few months, emotion crept into her voice. She changed when she became popular. She started thinking she was better than me, that she deserved success more than I did. And you didn't think so? I worked just as hard, maybe even harder. But she had talent, and I didn't. Tiffany clenched her fists. It's not fair. Why do some people get everything handed to them from birth, while others can try as hard as they want and still lose? Clark listened and realized that he was dealing with a classic case of murder, motivated by envy. Tiffany was not a born criminal. She was an ordinary girl who had been driven to extremes by circumstances and her own inability to accept reality. What happened that evening at the house on Gretio? Tiffany fell silent. For several minutes, the room was quiet, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, the girl raised her head and looked the detective in the eye. I didn't plan it. I just wanted to talk to her, try to explain how much it hurt me. But she started talking about how she would help me when she became a star, as if she were doing me a favor. Tiffany's voice trembled, and something inside me broke. The confession was slow, painful, but unstoppable. Tiffany talked about how months of pent-up anger had erupted into a fit of rage, about how she had picked up a piece of rebar and hit her friend, about the nightmare that followed. I don't remember all the details, she whispered. I just remember being very angry. And when I came to, Maya was gone. What about the note? I wrote it at home the next day. I went back there and left it. I wanted people to understand that she had forgotten her roots. She started thinking she was better than us. Clark wrote down every word. The confession was complete and detailed. All that remained was to find physical evidence to corroborate the testimony. A search of the Brown family home yielded the necessary evidence. In the washing machine, experts found traces of blood on Tiffany's clothes. In her room, they found a notebook with texts written in the same handwriting as the note at the crime scene. Most importantly, the psychological profile of the suspect fully matched that of the killer. By evening, Tiffany Brown had been officially arrested on charges of first-degree murder. The girl did not resist, did not demand a lawyer, did not deny her guilt. It seemed that the arrest was a relief for her after days of agonizing waiting. Tiffany's mother arrived at the police station when she learned of her daughter's arrest. Sharon Brown cried and repeated that she did not understand how this could have happened. Her daughter was a quiet, withdrawn girl who never hurt anyone. The doctor said she was depressed, she told Clark. He prescribed pills, but she didn't want to take them. She said she could handle it herself. Clark nodded, understanding the tragedy of the situation. 2 young lives had been destroyed, one physically, the other morally and legally. And all because, in a world where dreams were the only way to escape poverty, the success of some became a death sentence for others. Marcus Johnson came to the station when he heard about the arrest. He looked older than his years, bent over under the weight of grief. Clark told him about Tiffany's confession, about the motives for the crime. "I've known this girl since childhood," Marcus said. "She was always at our house. She ate at our table. Maya loved her like a sister. Sometimes the people closest to us cause the most pain," the detective replied. The next day, the story made the news. Local media wrote about the tragedy in the Detroit music community, about how envy destroyed a friendship and 2 human lives. Jason Wright gave an interview in which he spoke about Maya's talent and what a great loss her death was to music. Southern Trap Records released a statement saying that it was dedicating its next release to the memory of Maya Johnson. Her unfinished tracks were to be released as a posthumous album, with the proceeds going to her family. Tiffany was held in Wayne County Jail awaiting trial. She spent her days in solitary confinement, refusing visits and reading books from the prison library. A psychiatric evaluation found her sane at the time of the crime, ruling out an insanity defense. Her court-appointed lawyer advised her to plead guilty as part of a plea bargain with the prosecution in exchange for life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The alternative was the death penalty if the case went to trial by jury. Tiffany agreed to the deal. At the court hearing, she stood before the judge and gave a short speech. "I took the life of my best friend out of jealousy and selfishness. There is no excuse for what I did. Maya deserved better, from life and from me. I am ready to take responsibility for my actions." The judge sentenced her to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. At 20, Tiffany Brown became one of the youngest women in Michigan history to receive such a sentence. Clark was present at the hearing and watched as the sentence was handed down. In his career, this case became one of the saddest. There were no winners, only victims of circumstances and human weaknesses. In Detroit, a city where hope and despair went hand in hand, such tragedies happened all too often. Young people who had no other paths to success except talent, sports, or crime sometimes chose the darkest paths. The story of Maya Johnson and Tiffany Brown was yet another reminder of the price that could be paid for struggling to survive in a city that many considered dying. But life went on, new dreams were born on the ruins of old ones, and detectives like Clark continued to investigate crimes born of human passions.